Good morning. For those of you I haven't met yet, my name is Dr. Alex Sevilla, and I'm the Associate Dean and Director of the Heavener School of Business. On behalf of the Heavener School, including Bill Heavener, who's here, say hello, Bill. Say hello, everybody. Yeah. Yes. On behalf of the Heavener School and the Warrington College of Business and the University of Florida, I'm pleased to be hosting our session today with the Chairman and CEO of SunTrust Bank's Bill Rogers. So, before formally introducing Bill and bringing him on, I thought we might have a little bit of fun. I hope you're ready for a little bit of fun.
Sure.
Okay. So, how many of you attended the orange and blue game this weekend? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Most important question: did we win?
Yes.
Okay. For those of you who don't know, it's a spring scrimmage, so we have to win, right? Who won? Orange or blue? Orange. Excellent. Okay. So, think about the energy in that stadium, and for those of you that have been to the Swamp. And obviously, we can't fully replicate for Bill what it would be like to bring him to a game at the Swamp, but I'd like to try, okay? So in a moment, I'm gonna ask Bill to come down and we're gonna sit on stage and chat for a moment, and I'd like for you to recognize him being here in two ways. One is the reality, which is recognizing the Chairman and CEO of SunTrust Banks for spending his time with us this morning, and two, imagine if Bill was the starting quarterback who threw the winning touchdown for the next Gator championship football team.
Oh, wow.
Okay? No pressure. And give him that type of introduction.
Yeah.
Can we blow the roof off this place? Yeah. We ready? Okay. It is my distinct honor to welcome Bill Rogers. Yeah. Okay.
If any of you were aware of my athletic prowess, you would realize how absurd that was. But thank you anyway. So I'm going to have a little fun with you.
Yes.
So, and this will be a little bit about know your audience. Who was the coach of the blue team that lost?
I do not know.
Your boss.
Oh, no!
So there is part of know your audience,
yes,
as all this guy. I didn't know where you were going to go with that. I thought he's stepping right into it. I might just make him aware of where he's going. That way, you know, just there to help. Is this the way you guys dress every day? Because you really look great. So I'm assuming this isn't it, but your vitality and energy, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. I thought I'd make just a couple of comments about things that I think about, and then sit down and we'll have a great conversation. And what we really want this to be is about what you're thinking about. So this really needs to be your session, not my session. I'd love to hear your feedback and entertain your questions. I'm smart enough that I bring a lot of SunTrust teammates with me. So I have a lot of SunTrust teammates with me, recent graduates and part of our leadership team. So if this goes bad, I know they're going to support me. So at least I know I've got a friendly audience in here somewhere. So I always sort of pad the results in some way to make sure that we're going to have a good meeting. I started at SunTrust off a college campus 38 years ago. So started in my first job. I thought I would go into banking and I would learn a lot of things and then go get a real job somewhere else. I was really fortunate in that I started with a company that shared my values. It was supportive of me as an individual. I didn't want to go to graduate school, so I was able to do that at night while I worked at the company. So it gave me the opportunity to pursue my educational aspirations as well as my career aspirations. And I've never looked back. I've been fortunate. I've had about 7 or 8 careers. I've just had them at one company. So most of you all look at me and say 38 years at one company, like this guy's a dodo bird or an extinct animal of some type. But the fact is I've had a lot of careers, but I've just been fortunate to have them at one company. I've been the CEO for SunTrust now for 6.5 years. When I was first given the opportunity to take this job, I reached out to a lot of CEOs that I wanted to emulate. People that I thought carried themselves in the right way, They ran their companies purposefully. They were genuine. They were authentic leaders. And so I sought their advice. And I reached out and I picked up the phone and said, I've recently been appointed CEO of SunTrust. Will you meet with me? I thought what was going to happen is they were going to say, gosh, you know, let me set it up with my assistant and we'll get back with you next month. Maybe we can get together sometime. But the response was, come over to my house tonight. I'll be happy to talk to you about leadership. I'll be happy to share everything that I've learned and everything that I think. So it's a shared community about leadership. And that's the first sort of revelation that came to me in this job, is that you're not in it alone. There is a shared community about leadership. And the couple things that I took away, one was probably sort of the seminal thing that's guided me most in my leadership. And it was a very simple philosophy. And that's to bring clarity from complexity and purpose to the work. So clarity from complexity and purpose to the work. Our job's to make it easier, not to make it harder. And our job's to make it meaningful, to make work meaningful, make it be purposeful. There's a reason that we do what we do. Now, fortunately, I work in a company that allows me an incredible opportunity to do that. One, it's very complicated. So it's easy to talk about how to make it simple and how to make it easier in terms of what we do, but it's also very purposeful. I mean, we get to put people in their homes for the first time. We get to allow people to plan for retirement. We get to help somebody buy their first car to drive to their first job. I mean, we have an incredible business that we engage in, so it's purposeful by its nature. We decided to actually make a real stand against that. We defined the purpose of our company as lighting the way to financial well-being. And all of our teammates get up every day with that as a thought process, is that we actually have something to do. We actually have a role to play in the world. We have a role to play in our communities. We have a role to play in our country. And that's because there's a lot of stress. There's a lot of financial stress. And when I say some of this, I'm going to look at some of your faces, and I know a lot of you feel a lot of financial stress. Your families feel a lot of financial stress in helping giving you this incredible opportunity at the University of Florida. 50% of Americans don't have $2,000 saved for an emergency. And when we go to millennials, that's 60%. So that means half the country is one car accident, one healthcare issue, one child issue, one parent issue away from not having financial security. That is just a fine line of recovery. 1/3 of Americans have zero saved for retirement. Zero. 1/3. So it's a very, very fragile recovery, and we thought we had an obligation. We have a role to play in that. We need to provide the right education. We need to rally all of our SunTrust teammates, 23,000 strong, to be in support of financial well-being for the country. We did that at our own company. I made the incorrect assumption that our teammates would be different. Yes, CEOs make mistakes. Yes, we make incorrect assumptions. I made the assumption because that's the business we're in. We advise people on their own financial well-being. This is what we do, that we would be different. So we did a survey. And what we found out is we were feeling the exact same stress in our company that the country was feeling. So we started at home. We dealt with a company that we searched the country over. We found a company that we thought did the best employer financial well-being training. It was a company called 8 Pillars. They were based in Utah. And they had a program to help employees of companies develop their own financial well-being. We liked the process. The 8 Pillars started with set your values and ended with give back. You've got to bring somebody else across the transom. If you get across the transom, you've got to bring somebody else across the transom. And we invested a lot. We created a $1,000 match for every teammate who qualified. This was 50% of our teammates who qualified financially. We provided a $1,000 match if they started a savings plan, started an emergency savings plan, and then started a monthly savings plan, and if they completed the coursework. And now almost 80% of our teammates say they feel like they're on better financial well-being. And 75% participate in the program. On average, the participation rate is 3 to 4%. 75% of our teammates participate. And what do you think they are? They're better bankers. right? If you feel better about yourself, you're going to feel better about helping others. You're going to feel more secure in what you do. We thought that was so impactful that we were onto something, is we now run that as a not-for-profit and we offer it to other companies. We have now about 100 companies participating, big companies like Home Depot and Delta, small privately held companies, so it runs the whole gamut of people who have a similar view that they want to help their employees achieve financial well-being. So it's purposeful, and that's what we stand for. I'm really proud to be here today. We have a really, really successful track record with Gators. Really successful. I'm flying the colors. I hope that's not missed on you. But this is the color I fly every Monday. Every Monday we have sort of a little thing in our company that we try to wear the colors. And our colors are your colors. So it actually sort of worked perfectly. I didn't have to go buy an orange tie this weekend. I already had one. In fact, I have several. At one point, 20% of my executive team were Gators, of my direct reports. So we have a very successful track record, not only at the starting level, but through the success at our company. Our commitment to Florida is significant. We have over 1 million clients in Florida. We have almost 200,000 business clients. This is a big part of what we do. This state is a big part of the success of our company. So it's important to us. So maybe with that, I'll pause, Alex, come over and sit with you, and we'll talk about what you want to talk about.
Great.
Now,
Thank
I'm
you,
assuming Bill's a phone a friend if these questions get hard.
Very much so. Yes, 100%. So for those in the audience, what we're going to do is we're going to frame this conversation in 2 parts. So part 1 will be, I have a couple of questions to ask of Bill to start the conversation going. But 2, as he mentioned, we really want this time to be for you. So if you are a student in the audience, I'd love for you to be thinking about one really dynamite, provocative question to ask of Bill to finish off our conversation. Does that work? We ready to do that? Great. And just thank you so much for that introduction. I think some of the words that I took from that, purpose, integrity, passion, principle, not only what you've done for the firm and the culture shifting that you've that's taken place there, but also for your clients and for the industry at large. So great way to start our conversation.
Great.
So my first question to you, Bill, is going to focus on sort of industry and economics. Mm-hmm. Every industry and economic cycle presents unique challenges and opportunities, both for firms as well as professionals. So given your unique perspective as the CEO of SunTrust, what are some of the most interesting challenges and potentially more interesting opportunities that you see, both in the banking industry as well as with the global economy?
I mean, we are clearly at a time of unprecedented change, and I know whenever you're in that era, you think that this is the time where you've had the most change, but technology has really changed that whole equation. If we look at sort of the charts in terms of innovation and what's happening with technology, and we are at the most dramatic time and speed of change of any era, and I only see that accelerating, which you ought to get really excited about being in this room. And it has a lot of really positives of what can be done with technology. The digitization of our businesses make us more efficient. The way consumers choose to engage with us is dramatically changing. So that gives everybody an opportunity. It sort of is whatever your legacy infrastructure with doesn't really matter as much. It's really sort of what the consumer wants to do and how do you follow those patterns. The use of artificial intelligence, machine learning, data and analytics. I usually get asked the question is when you were at school, would you have studied something differently? I would have gone for a PhD in math, mm-hmm. I think, instead of business. That would have added that to my equation. So the transformation of the kind of people and the requirements and the things that are going on the technology side, and then it also has some challenges as well. So what does AI do from a social impact in our country? What does it mean when artificial intelligence is replacing certain jobs? We see with the advent of Facebook, what does it mean with data and analytics and how you use data? What does that mean to change the social contract that we have with each other? So there are as many exciting things that are going on that front as there are challenges, and then the underlying challenges is related to the areas of cybersecurity and fraud, which we
particularly in your industry.
particularly
yes.
in our industry, and we spend an incredible amount of time, energy, and money. Again, not only thinking about all the opportunities, but also thinking about all the challenges and the bad actors that want to influence the financial services business.
Excellent. One of the things that we talk to our students a lot about is the idea of not just having a functional area of expertise, but picking up the plane a little bit and thinking from a macro perspective, what are the tectonic plate shifts that are happening within a company, within an industry, within the economy? If you can anticipate those things, such as the machine learning and data information and all of the things that Bill had mentioned, and are prepared for those things, not only is your subject matter expertise going to shine, but you're going to be in a position to have more exposure and access within a company. Great, thank you, Bill. My second question focuses on lifetime learning, which of course is important to us at the University of Florida. And it's one of the core principles that we aspire to teach here at UF, which is the idea that learning never really ends.
No doubt.
It shifts in many ways. It becomes more complicated, it becomes more organic, and hopefully more exhilarating as we move forward away from an academic setting. So making a true commitment to embracing a lifetime learning mindset can really be a game changer for professionals, particularly early on in their careers. So what does lifetime learning mean to you? How have you embodied that? And where has it made the deepest impact on you professionally or even personally?
Great, and I would say to those of you in the room, and this may not sound that prophetic now, it's not about what you learned, it's how to learn. And that's sort of the key element. The things that you learn are important. I don't want to be dismissive of that. That's why your schools rank so high, and that's why you've got all the credibility and great leadership. But it's really learning how to learn. That's going to be the biggest success factor in your careers going forward. I can say for myself, you have to continually to reinvest. I mean, literally every day. There is no place where you should feel comfort in your knowledge base. I never get up feeling comfortable that I know enough or that I know something. That I'm always feeling the need to expand my horizon, expand my capability. That started early in my career. As I said, I went to graduate school at night. There were things, even though I had an undergraduate business degree, there were things that I thought that I wanted to expand and create more capacity against, and do it in an environment where it was live fire, live ammunition, being able to deal with real issues that we were dealing with every day. I raised my hand at any opportunity the company gave for advanced learning. If there was any opportunity, I was first in line with the hand up, saying, "Please choose me. Give me an opportunity to do that." When I got this job as CEO, I thought to myself, "Okay, how are you going to learn how to do that?" One of your competing graduate schools in Boston, that'll go unnamed, has an advanced school for first-time CEOs. With that exact point, is it that you're starting your learning journey. You're
That's
not
right.
ending your learning journey
Right.
by being a CEO. You're starting. I continue to go to conferences. I go to a lot more high-tech type things today than I did in the past. I spent a lot more time on the West Coast in the last 5 years than I did in the last 20 years, just making sure that you're understanding and getting exposed to what's going on. So it's an absolute lifetime learning, and it never stops. The ability here to learn how to learn is the key point, and how to learn together in a collaborative environment.
So in the idea of learning how to learn, and with the comments that Bill made previously about how quickly technology in particular has changed industry, how will you ever be in a spot to be successful if you don't have the macro principle of understanding that it is about the engagement of continuing to invest in yourself and learning, because those items would not have been on the radar screen if we were talking certainly 30 years ago,
Yeah.
or 20 years ago, or maybe even 5 years ago. So where are you going to be in 5, 10, 30 years? And do you make a commitment to yourself to make that investment? And the other thing that I would say quickly is, as you leave an academic setting and go into a professional one, be voracious about your own professional development. There is no syllabus, there is no rubric, there is nothing that will force you to do X taking those opportunities for professional development, seeking them out, and being assertive and positive with your leadership to find those is what's going to help you not only get better at what you do, but also help you stand out professionally.
I know the people in this room can't believe this, but for 2/3 of my career, a little over 2/3, the iPhone didn't exist.
Yes. Right.
So just put that in a little perspective of the dramatic change.
Yes. So my last question to you is about giving advice to our students, and then we'll turn things over to see what's on their mind.
Right.
The Heavener School and the Warrington College are fortunate to be, as you mentioned, a core source of talent for SunTrust, which is such wonderful news for our students and our college and, of course, the university. All of these partnerships, and particularly one at SunTrust, is important to us on so many levels, and we appreciate the trust your organization places in us to provide you with the talent for the next generation of leaders. But of course, getting the internship or getting the full-time offer is really when the game starts.
Right.
So what advice can you offer to our students about how the most talented professionals that you have hired from any university or institution that you've hired, coached, and mentored over the years have found top-line success at SunTrust? What are some of the things that have really stood out about those superstars?
First and foremost, and I think this applies in most companies and 100% applies in SunTrust, is success is a team sport. And it just has to start that way. If you start with the premise that it's about me and it's about my success, that's gonna have a short life. So it's absolutely a team sport. It's what we support. It's part of our core values and principles of our company. So it starts there. So the people who play well on teams, and sometimes you're leading the team and sometimes you're following, and being able to play both those roles with the same level of intensity and success is foremost what we look at. We talked a little bit about it, is adaptability. It's going to be different. I was joking with some of our youngest teammates, and they were just getting ready to get placed in areas of the company. When I started, the two areas of the company that I said I wanted to be in were commercial real estate and international. Guess what? In a 38-year career, the two areas I've never worked in our company. Commercial real estate and real estate, and literally everything else I've had some exposure to. So it's the ability to be adaptable and to be adaptable to different environments. We talked about it, and absolutely is on my list, is the commitment to be a continuous learner. We'll invest a lot in teammate success. We make a lot of investment in teammate success, but it only works if the teammate makes a requisite, if not disproportional, investment in themselves. So it has to work. It has to work both ways.
And you can see that.
Oh,
yes.
you can see it. You can see it day one. It's the. Are you raising your hand? Are you volunteering? Are you wanting to be in the things that may not advance your career day one, but will advance your career long term? Are you making those concessions to say, yeah, I'll go to the weekend class, or I'll go to the thing at night, or I'll attend the thing that's maybe not part of my normal curriculum to make sure that I continue to invest in myself. And then maybe the last one, and we really see this out of the University of Florida graduates, is just authentic leadership. Be who you are. Don't be somebody else. As soon as you try to be somebody else or try to emulate something, be who you are. You got here for a reason. You've had success. You have the diversity of your background and what's fed you as an individual, and bring that to the game and do it in an authentic way. Our company prides itself on being a very inclusive company. Well, that really only has value if everybody brings their inclusivity to the equation, not if everybody wants to sort of be at the norm. I'd say those are some of the big ones, and it comes out early. I mean, you really can see it early in a career.
You know how impactful that is to just see that it's not two-dimensional. These words and these topics, they live and breathe in the corporate culture early on in your career. So how can you follow that great advice? And a couple points on those comments that you made, and then we'll turn things to questions from our students. So the idea of success being a team effort. I teach a leadership class here, and for those of you that are in the audience that have taken that class, they'll know that one of the first things that we talk about is a true leader understands that it's not about them. It's about the people that are all around them, those that they are entrusted to partner with, those that they are entrusted to serve. And there's lots of reasons why people get that wrong. And some of them are not negative reasons. They happen because of time pressure and the reality of the markets and a little bit of hubris and things of that nature. But if you can focus on the team around you, you're always going to build more credibility. You're always going to have your likability index be as high as possible, which lends itself to more opportunities and lends itself to being a strong leader. And then the authentic leadership, I couldn't have stated it any better. You have to be who you are intended to be. And part of your opportunity here at the university is to help figure that out. And there's going to be countless additional lessons beyond the time that you're here at UF to help you discover that. And as long as you are open to those comments and as long as you're open to those thoughts and ideas, you'll be in a position to shift in a way that allows your authentic leadership to stand out, and that's what finds that gravitational pull where people want to be connected to you and want to partner with you. So with that, I will open things up for questions from our students. And I believe we have a couple of wonderful runners with microphones so that we can hear the questions. See Alex in the back.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers, for coming out here. It's been very informational and helpful. My question is on cybersecurity. You mentioned it early on. What is being done currently in the industry to increase the security and to decrease fraud? And what can we do to prepare ourselves technologically or just with information so we can also be able to confront that when we enter the industry?
Yeah, the investment in everything cyber, as I said, is sort of disproportionately growing relative to the other investments we make in our company, and that's equal as it relates to the financial services industry. You were quick to point out that immediately you said, especially for your company, and we're fundamental believers that the chain is only as strong as its weakest link. It's an area where financial services companies, we don't compete in cybersecurity. We compete on everything else. Trust me, we compete. But in cyber, we don't compete because we really want to make sure that everybody is playing at the highest common denominator possible. We've set up private and governmental institutions that share information. So if something happens at Regions Bank from a cybersecurity element, I'll know it within minutes. Our team will know it within minutes. These were the issues, these were the things that went on, these are the things that you should look for. So we've made a big investment in not only our own company, but also a big investment in making sure that the industry cooperates and works together. As it relates to fraud specifically, just in terms of the challenges, 1 out of every 4 accounts opened up online is fraudulent. So,
wow.
so think about that from a risk standpoint, from financial services. So think about that if in a physical branch, 1 out of 4 people who walked in the branch was going to rob it, because that's sort of the equivalent. And think about what a branch would look like if that were the case. We'd have TSA agents, we'd have armed guards, who knows what we'd have. So it's the same equivalent on cyber in terms of the element of fraud and what we're trying to do in terms of preventative issues. As it relates to your own personal data, is protect your own personal data. I mean, if we've learned anything from what we've seen in recent events, is more of your data is being used than you're aware of, and we're often, and I'll speak for myself. I've looked at my own personal data, where it is. I've had some people help me think about that, and it's more places than I thought it would be. And people know more about me than I thought they knew. So just be careful about how you share your personal data. You shouldn't be scared of the financial services industry because there are lots of frameworks and there are lots of firewalls built around it. But that doesn't mean you also shouldn't be careful about where you share your data.
Next question.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Given the current magnitude of debt to GDP ratio in the US. What are your views on quantitative easing?
Yeah, let me also say these are my personal views because I have sat on the board of the Atlanta Fed, and I sit on something called the Federal Advisory Committee with the Federal Reserve. So everything that I share is my personal view. It doesn't reflect the Federal Reserve. It's really interesting that the Fed is in an incredible transformation right now, and you can sort of see it in the dialogue and the conversations that we're having. Is the Fed has gone from being on total offense, so really trying to overcome some of the fiscal challenges that have existed in the country, and debt, GDP, and others, but have been on total offense and trying to ingrain the economy and spur the economy with both low rates and with quantitative easing. And you'd have to say, on balance, that's been effective. But the shift is to defense. Because now we see with the advent of tax reform and what's happened with unemployment, we see more heat in terms of the economy. So the Fed's got to do a complete shift from offense to defense, which is a dramatic change. So the Fed sits here with a $4 trillion plus balance sheet. I think the Fed's going to be very slow to be winding down that balance sheet because it's very fragile in terms of what that means from a defense standpoint. The Fed's going to have to be focused on fighting inflation. Inflation sort of wasn't the issue for all of the recovery, and now all of a sudden it's starting to peak as the issue. And when you see just a little spark of information about inflation, what happens to markets? The beta around inflation data has just gone sort of off the charts, and before it wasn't a key issue. So I think quantitative easing, I think it worked. I think it was effective, but the offense is over. You know, it's moving to defense, and defense comes with higher rates and slowly reducing the Fed's balance sheet in a very measured, appropriate way. That doesn't let the particularly inflation get out of control.
I love that visualization of offense to defense.
Right.
It's a difficult shift to make.
It's a very difficult shift to make.
Excellent. Next question.
Good morning, Mr.
morning.
Rogers. My question is a little less industry focused and more focused on your personal practices.
Okay.
So other than continuing to learn and just reaching out to mentors, how do you navigate challenges that you face, whether that's professionally or in your personal life?
Okay. The first is I try to surround myself with people who are not like me. I have a really great asset that I've been at SunTrust for 38 years. I have an incredible liability that I've been at SunTrust for 38 years. And I have to wake up every day recognizing both of those, that it's an incredible asset. I've got a good feel for the company, the culture, and where we've been. But I want to make sure that I know where we're going. So one is to surround myself with people who are not like me and who are different from virtually every capacity possible. And then to create an environment where ideas and concepts and teamwork manifest itself at a fast and effective pace. Similarly, for every senior level person that we hire into the company above a certain level, I ask them to come visit with me when they first started. If I wasn't involved in their interview process, I want them to come visit me when they first started because they bring a whole bunch of knowledge that's outside our industry or certainly outside our company. And I want to know about that. What'd you do? How'd you act? What was happening? And, without divulging secrets or what was happening in those companies. And then I ask them to come back in 89 days. And I'm very purposeful about that process because after 90 days, they're part of us. They're doing the stuff, and that's a good thing.
Yes.
That's a good thing. But I ask them to come back in 89 days and tell me everything they learned about SunTrust that they liked and they thought was supportive. And then also to be candid with me and tell me about everything that's not working. What did they see at SunTrust that could be improved versus where they saw somewhere else? And it's critical to do both of those. And then similarly on my personal life, I have 6 millennials in my direct family, and they give me all the advice and challenge and diversity of opinion that I need, whether I want it or not. And they're great in delivering. I have 4 children, 2 of them are married, so we've got 3. Well, actually, I have to add to my equation. I realized my son just got married last weekend, so I now have 7 millennials giving me advice and approach. So similarly on the personal side, is just surround yourself with people who don't think like you, who will give you different advice, and go places where it's uncomfortable. I was with my daughter, and she was telling a story, about. And she'd asked me a question. She said, "Have you ever been in an environment where you're the only white person in the room?" And I said, "Yes." And it's purposeful. That I had to make that purposeful to go do that, because she was describing a situation that was on the opposite side. So part of the growth investment is go where you're uncomfortable, and if you look at your calendar and you think about your week or your month and you think, gosh, all those meetings were comfortable, you probably weren't at the right places. Probably you need to go some places that you say, gosh, that was really uncomfortable. I didn't feel the same level of comfort that I would normally.
Groupthink is alive and well in many organizations, and the strategy that you put forward not only helps break that down, but it also leads again to this idea of authenticity and really being open to new ideas, even ones that push the envelope, even ones that are difficult to hear. And for our students in the audience, you're always better equipped to, again, be your best authentic self if you have a real understanding of what the people around you are thinking, as opposed to putting up walls that would allow you to believe that you understand what they're thinking, or their perception is actually quite different. So it's
and I would add to that is people care about your opinion.
Yes.
You're generally, and I can certainly speak for SunTrust, you're going to go into environments where people care about your opinion, and your opinion does matter. You want to be judicious, you want to be appropriate, and all those things, but your opinion matters. And people want you to come into their environment for a reason. And it's not only to apply your skills, but it's apply to all the other things that have formed you as a person into that environment. So don't think that your opinion doesn't matter. It absolutely matters.
Great advice. Next question.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Rogers. Thank you so much for coming out to UF. My question to you today, sir, is as a huge proponent of mindfulness meditation, I'm curious, what are some of the things that you do to start off your day in a positive, empathetic, and also open mindset?
Yeah, it's a great, and there's been a lot written, and I've talked to a number of CEOs who practice meditation. I don't, but I've talked to numbers in that same sort of exploration mindset of that. I have a couple of little funny rituals that I focus on, of things that try to get me level set for the day, the week, the month, the year, whatever it may be, and I try to make sure that I use those things. Every morning when I get up, I have a SunTrust pen that we wear, and I put it in a place in my closet, and I purposefully put it on, and I purposefully reflect that morning about what it means. So that's not sitting on my jacket the night before and I just put my coat on and I don't really think about it. But I think about what that means and what I represent. And that I represent 23,000 teammates. I've got to do a really good job today. I've got to perform at a really high level. I represent my family. I represent where I come from, and I want to take that seriously. So I have a little sort of moment to myself that I think about it. That I think about what I'm doing. I, like everybody else, work a lot of hours and make a lot of commitments. I made a commitment several years ago, 20 plus years ago in my career, that I was always going to take Saturday off. I was going to take one day off. I worked I worked incessantly like everybody else, but that I was going to try to take Saturday off. Do I abide by it all the time? No, because there are commitments and things you're going to do, but that would be a day that I would reflect on my family, reflect on things that I need to do, try to have some sort of downtime if possible in terms of what you do. So I made a commitment that I would try to make that work. So while I don't practice sort of meditation, I do try to find moments that I can reflect for myself and focus on things that I want to be focused on.
I love the pin story. It's a perfect visual example of it's not about you, it's about them. Did you hear the comment about putting the pin on the 23,000, is it?
Right.
23,000 employees, the team, the clients, that there is a connection between putting that pin on and what that means for who you represent. Very powerful. Next question. Down at the front.
Morning, Mr. Rogers. My name is Rama, and I'm a graduate student here doing my first year MBA program. I come into the MBA program with considerable experience, and in my, from what I've seen is that as we talk about more diversity and inclusion, we also have seen a lot of problems because we come from different backgrounds, values, and cultures. How do you handle conflict while at the same time getting the benefits of having diverse opinions?
Yeah, I think they come hand in hand. You can't ask for one and not expect the other. I mean, I think that's an unfair expectation. So you know what we want to ensure is that that conflict is handled in an appropriate way. Is that that we discuss it openly. If 23,000 teammates in a wildly diverse, intentionally diverse workforce, they have a lot of different opinions on a lot of different issues. And as you can imagine, on thinking about any sort of social issue, I might get pushed in lots of different directions. So why aren't you taking a stand on this, or why aren't you taking a stand on that? And it was one of the really strong reasons that we said, actually, let's take a stand on one important thing, which is financial confidence. And let's actually align around that. There is no conflict around that issue. Financial confidence and financial well-being sees through everything, right? At any end of the socioeconomic background, at any end of the any type of diverse background, those are. So let's rally around that. Let's find the one thing that we are totally focused on as a company. So while we're disagreeing about certain, whatever they may be, social issues or challenges, or even how we do business, let's align that we don't disagree around this, and let's align that circle is inclusive by its nature, and that circle is as wide as it can possibly be. And if it doesn't pick somebody up, let's figure out how to expand it to make sure that it picks everybody up in that spectrum. So it's about agreeing that conflict is okay, but also finding the purposeful side where conflict doesn't exist, where there's sort of the safe place that we all go to make sure that we're on the same track. And don't forget that that's part of the fabric of what we do. Does that make sense?
Next question. There's two on.
Morning, Bill.
Good morning.
I have a question as it pertains to, this might be a little bit of a curveball. So digital assets are becoming a big thing right now. And I'm actually in the MBA program, and I run a company that is heavily invested in digital assets, particularly digital currencies. I was wondering how that affects your business model. I know it's an emerging market, still has a couple of years before maturity, you know, or could be half a decade. I don't know. No one really knows. But nonetheless, I figured I'd ask and see what your opinion was on Thank you.
Yeah, I think that the advent of digital assets, or let's put them in the case of cryptocurrencies or whatever it may be, I think you're right. I mean, that's not a today issue, but it absolutely is something that we need to be aware of, because there's a demand, there's a need, and how that need's satisfied, we don't know how that story is going to end. We could have different views in different areas about whether something's going to be the right solution or the wrong solution. But the point is, there's demand, and there's a need for greater transparency. There's a need for an ability to conduct trade at a level where there's less confidence in existing currencies. So just as one example, and then the technology supporting it is critical. So blockchain technology as a technology is going to be used all across our businesses. So and people sometimes have a hard time segregating. So the technology behind blockchain in terms of asset management and in terms of currency management and all those issues is really significant, and is requiring a deep level of investment. As it relates to the currency side, we'll see where that develops. I would say, in fairness, we're a little more on the sidelines and watching than we are on the field and participating, because we don't sort of see that as our role necessarily, except for the underlying technology. And then back to the question of continuous learning, I invest a lot of time in really understanding and trying to make sure, where does this fit for us as a company, and when is the time we want to lean in heavily, and when is the time we want to make sure that we're watching. Just within the last 2 weeks, I was with probably one of the largest investors in everything cryptocurrency-wise, to say, okay, why are you doing this? Explain this to me. Tell me what we should be doing as a company. How should we be thinking about it? So it clearly falls into that same category of continuous learning.
A great idea to get the feedback from those investors directly.
Yeah, and that was really sort of key for me, is really to find out who's putting their own personal money in, and it's amazing how your perspective changes when it's your own money versus somebody else's.
There's another question right here.
Hello, Bill Rogers. Thank you for being here today. My question is more about the change in generations per se. The young people now are more considered to look at their own phones compared to going face to face with actual bank representative. And with the rise of new pure online banking systems, with interest rates being traditionally higher than the traditional banks, how do you believe that SunTrust is reacting to this to still become a leader in the global market for banking industries?
Right. So we have today, for the first time ever, 5 generations working at our company, which is fantastic. And here's the one thing that I remind our team about: any assumption you make about a generation is wrong. And if you start with that premise, it's a really good place to start. I will give you one sort of example that's Florida specific. Is we made a change in our digital banking platform in terms of sort of how something on the face of it looks. I got a handwritten letter writing campaign from a retirement community in Naples, and they were rallying because they were power online users in this retirement community, and they were really unhappy with the change that we had made to the face of our digital platform. So if I made the assumption that that's a generation that's not focused on online banking, I would have been
They corrected that assumption.
They corrected that assumption very, very quickly. It was a calibrated, campaign to get my attention, which it did, obviously. The change in the environment. We used to say we wanted to be an omni-channel bank, that you wanted to have lots of different channels and support. So you would need the physical channel, you need the digital channel. Actually, in the last several months, I've changed that to be digital first. It's actually digital backwards. Everything is moving to a much more digitized framework, and the other part of the infrastructure of the company is in support of digital. I mean, the consumer has voted. I mean, and I gave the example of, it's not just young people. It's all across the spectrum of the expectation of what the digital world looks like. We made a really early foray into the consumer lending side on a national basis. We have a company called Lightstream, which does online consumer lending. Significant departure from anything we'd done before in the company, and unsecured online lending, 24-hour type response. And it's been a great part of our business, growing at a really high pace. So we've been invested, and I think on the digital side, we look at sort of the rating of our app, the usability, the penetration within our client base. All those numbers are really strong for us relative to our competitors. So our client base has had high adoption of our digital assets. Our digital assets are rated pretty highly among the users of those assets. And I believe fundamentally that's the change, is the company, the physical part of the company is in support of the digital part of the organization. I think that's as I said, I think that's within sort of the last 12 months of an insight of saying, okay, actually we just have to really think differently. We see and understand the competitive nature of sort of the digital only avenue. And we're fundamental believers, given the fact that we've invested in digital only and the physical, that actually having both is really important. And having a highly rated, stable institution sitting under that really matters. We've invested significantly as an industry in something called Zelle, which is P2P payments, because we'd allowed that to leave the banking system. Many of you use Venmo, I'm sure, or other sources, and you might not really have an idea of who supports that or who owns that. And what we want to do is provide the underpinning of the security, the insured deposit, the regulated capital part in the P2P payments. Would be a really good example of where the industry sort of fell asleep at the switch a little bit and let that slip out. Now we're trying to make sure that we bring that in back into the solid regulated industry. It was a long answer to a short, direct question, and I hope I hit on some of your points.
So we're getting close to the end of our time, so I wanted to finish with one quick question.
Okay.
We've covered a number of topics today, and thank you so much for your insight and for all of the enthusiasm around the questions that our students provided. If you could leave our students in the audience with one piece of advice that you would have loved to have had in your time at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill to walk away from this room with a signature memorable moment, what would that be?
Well, that's a tough question. You compared me to the moment in the swamp. I mean, that's no comparison. So now you're leading me with this kind of question of the.
I have full faith, Bill.
Exactly,
Full faith.
full faith in the capability. I think I was slow in the learning phase of what we talked about early. Is that it is continuous learning, and when I graduated, the pace of change was much slower. So you could actually learn and change at a slower pace and adopt and adapt differently. I didn't have as good an understanding of the fact that the ability to adopt and adapt is equally as important as what your subject matter expertise is and what your capabilities are and what you invest in. Those are really important. I don't want to undermine that or underplay that in any way. But the ability to adapt and adopt at a much faster pace. So the investment in the learning how to learn, that's a lesson I wish I'd had earlier in my career. Probably in the latter, 3/4 of my career, that's probably been more of a revelation as sort of seeing the pace of change and things that have happened in our industry. And then the other was the piece of advice I gave earlier: is your opinion matters. It really does matter. I hope our teammates feel like their opinion matters. We use lots of resources and ways to try to make sure that we solicit that opinion, that we understand it, and the investment you've made in yourself, you're really valuable. Don't underestimate your value to an organization. And then the last and maybe the most important is do something that matters to you. Be purposeful in what you do. Fortunately, we're in a much better environment today where you don't have to just get a job. You're highly sought after, and do something that matters to you. I get up every day and know that if I work a little bit harder, we're going to help more people take a step towards financial confidence. And that's just a really strong motivation for me. All the other things, we've got an earnings report, shareholders meetings, all that stuff. We'll get to all that. All that's going to go fine. But the purpose in what I do is critical to who I am as a person. So work for something that's important to you. And for me, I found it for me. You need to find it for yourselves. It will create an environment where you literally never have a bad day at work. And I know that sounds crazy, but I've really never had a bad day at work. Just because I know what we're doing matters, and if we do it better, we'll impact more people. And it's a great source of motivation and a reason to get up and work hard every day.
So what I heard from that is subject matter expertise matters. What you're learning here matters.
No doubt.
What is more important is your ability to continue to learn and understand how vital it is that you be able to deal with ambiguity and uncertainty and all of the things, the curveballs that you will find that you can't precog and anticipate. But then you also have to be humble. You have to be your authentic self, and that has to be connected to passion and to who you are internally, why you do the things that you do, why you wake up in the morning, put the pin on in your own world, and reflect who you are from a value proposition, and then be able to do your best work. That make sense?
Makes total sense. And I just close by just saying thank you to all of you for being here and putting on a coat and tie and getting dressed up to come up in the morning. And not everybody would do that. And it's your first evidence point of your investment in yourself. I hope that I've given you some slight return on that investment. It may not have been what you wanted, but hopefully it's some slight return. And then thank you for your leadership. And Bill, obviously thank you for your incredible leadership and what you've accomplished at this university. It's just a great source of pride for me to be here and to be among you. So thank you.
Please.